On the evening of the 6th of May, 1910, the King of England was dying. The room at Buckingham Palace held the people who were meant to be there: the doctors, his sons, his wife, Queen Alexandra. And then Alexandra did something almost no one expected. She sent for another woman, not a relative, not a lady-in-waiting. She sent for her husband's mistress. The woman who came was Alice Keppel. For 12 years, she had been the most quietly powerful figure at the English court and the most disciplined. She had never given herself away, never made a scene, never once let the composure slip. But at the king's bedside, it finally did. She broke down so completely that she had to be led from the room. It was the only time anyone ever recorded Alice Keppel losing control. Because control was the whole secret. It was how a girl of modest means from a Scottish castle became a king's confidant, a government's back channel, and one of the wealthiest women in Edwardian England, while leaving almost nothing of herself behind. Almost nothing. Because there are the jewels, and more than a century later, inside that same palace, another woman would wear the rubies a king once chose for Alice. Her name was Camilla. She shared Alice's blood and Alice's secret. She too would become the mistress of a Prince of Wales. And what happened to her would answer the question Alice never got to ask aloud. Can a woman like this ever truly come in from the shadows? This is the story of the mistress who understood that the most valuable thing she owned was her silence, and of the jewels that remembered everything she refused to say. The girl who married well and loved sensibly. She was born Alice Frederica Edmonstone in 1868, the youngest daughter of a Scottish admiral, and she grew up at Duntreath Castle, old, handsome, and not nearly as rich as it looked. That gap between the appearance of grandeur and the reality of limited means would shape everything she became. In 1891, she married the Honourable George Keppel, a younger son of an earl, charming, well-connected, and almost as short of money as she was. By every account, theirs was a genuinely affectionate marriage, and an Edwardian one. In their world, among their set, discreet affairs were not scandals so long as the forms were observed. Both of them understood the rules. Alice simply played the game better than anyone alive. In 1898, she met Albert Edward, Prince of Wales, Bertie to his circle, the restless heir to Victoria's throne. She was 29, he was 56. Within a short time she was his mistress, and she would remain so through his accession as King Edward VII in 1901 until the night he died. What began as an affair settled into something closer to a partnership. She was the one who could calm his famous temper, lighten his black moods, and make a difficult man easier to be around. To understand Alice's power, you have to understand the woman she replaced. Before her, the prince's most prominent companion had been Daisy Greville, the Countess of Warwick, beautiful, clever, and fatally fond of talking. The court nicknamed her the Babbling Brook, and her indiscretion made her a liability. Alice was the opposite by design. Queen Alexandra, who knew everything, tolerated her, and reportedly preferred her precisely because she never embarrassed anyone. Daisy's own half-sister put it with cruel accuracy. The prince, she said, was a much pleasanter child since he changed mistresses. So Alice did the work of a kind of second queen without ever claiming the word. She hosted the dinners and the long weekends. She travelled with the king to Biarritz year after year, shadowing the royal calendar. And through all of it, she practiced an iron discretion, supporting the monarchy, supporting marriage, supporting the very institutions her own position quietly contradicted. The restraint was not weakness. It was strategy. It was how she lasted. Hold on to that word, discretion. Because the great-granddaughter who would one day inherit Alice's rubies built her life doing the opposite of discreet, in the full glare of a watching world, and survived it. We'll come back to her. Here is the part the gossip always misses, and the part that makes Alice Keppel genuinely remarkable rather than merely glamorous. She was not just a companion, she was a channel. When ministers needed to reach the king informally, they sometimes reached him through her. The Viceroy of India recalled using her to put a case to Edward in line with Foreign Office thinking. The Prime Minister, Asquith, and his wife Margot are said to have thanked her in writing for her wise counsel. At her table, royal preferences and political positions could be floated, tested, softened, a private forum that ran alongside the official one. And yet, when Margot Asquith named her in a memoir as the king's advisor, Alice was annoyed. She had real influence over the affairs of an empire, and her instinct was to hide it. Most people spend their lives wanting credit. Alice spent hers making sure there would be as little of her on the record as possible. That choice is why she feels half erased today. It was also the source of all her strength. So, what does a king give a woman who refuses to be seen taking anything? Not, it seems, simple payments. Edward's gifts to Alice were cleverer than that. He brought her into the orbit of his financier and friend Sir Ernest Cassel, one of the great moneymen of the age, who managed her investments and arranged the endowments that made her secure. The most famous example was not a diamond at all. It was a parcel of shares in a rubber company, a holding that would grow, by later accounts, into something like £50,000. In today's money, several million. Call it the invisible jewel. The most durable thing Edward ever gave Alice was not an object you could photograph. It was a fortune, quietly compounding, that would carry her family for generations after the affair itself was over. But there were objects too. The one we can still see is a ruby and diamond suite, described by the jewellery historian Geoffrey Munn as a piece of gold and platinum set with diamonds and rubies and built to convert between a tiara and a flexible necklace. Its fitted case points to a Parisian house and the turn of the century. The tradition, and it is a tradition, not a receipt, is that Edward bought it for Alice in those early years of his reign. No purchase record has ever surfaced to prove it, but the suite has been called Keppel's tiara for 100 years, and here is the detail that makes it more interesting than a simple love token. The rubies are synthetic, not natural stones, but manufactured ones, which, in the early 1900s, were brand new and rather fashionable, a modern marvel rather than a cheap substitute. Jewelers like to say that rubies set with diamonds speak a language, enduring love. It is a lovely reading. It is also a convention we impose on the piece, not a sentiment Edward ever wrote down. A great romantic jewel built fittingly around a beautiful illusion. And keep one more piece in the back of your mind. There is a necklace Camilla still wears today that the palace will describe only as a gift from her adored grandmother. Who that grandmother was is the quiet hinge this entire story turns on. We are almost there. Which brings us back to that room in May 1910. There is a story, and it should be told as a story, that as the king lay dying, Cassel arrived at the palace with an envelope. £10,000 in cash, nominally interest owed, but understood by everyone to be meant for Alice. The king died before it could reach her, and the money, the tale goes, was quietly handed back. No ledger confirms it. The accounts disagree on whether it was ever given at all, but it tells you exactly how their world worked, in tact, in suggestion, in things understood and never said aloud. When Edward died, Alice's protection died with him. The new king and queen, George V and the formidable Queen Mary, had no interest in keeping his mistress near the throne. The warmth was gone. And so, with characteristic discretion, Alice simply left. She took her family abroad for 2 years, Ceylon, the Far East, and let the new reign settle without her in the frame. She would spend her long second act as one of the great hostesses of Europe, eventually buying the Villa dell'Ombrellino on a hill above Florence, where she entertained exiled royalty and rising politicians, Winston Churchill among them. And in December 1936, dining at the Ritz as Edward VIII gave up his throne to marry a divorced American woman, Alice Keppel delivered the line that has followed her ever since. "Things were done much better in my day." She meant it as a verdict. In her day, a Prince of Wales and the woman he loved did not detonate a monarchy. They arranged things, kept the forms, kept the secret. What she could not have known is that she was also describing the one thing her own bloodline would one day refuse to do, and win anyway. Alice Keppel died in Florence in 1947, and here the jewels take over the story because jewels do what people cannot. They carry a woman forward through time. Her fortune and her pieces passed down the female line through her younger daughter, Sonia. Her elder daughter, Violet, was almost certainly not the king's child. It is Sonia's line that matters here. From Sonia, the inheritance ran on. A floral diamond tiara that Camilla would one day wear at her first wedding, and that serpent necklace by Van Cleef and Arpels, the one the palace ties to her adored grandmother. There is your hinge. The grandmother Camilla adored, the woman whose serpent she still wears, was almost certainly Sonia, the daughter of the king's mistress. The bloodline runs straight from Alice's bedroom at the heart of the Edwardian court to the throat of a future queen. Think about what that means. The Edwardian world Alice ruled from the shadows did not vanish. It travelled down 4 generations of women, in gold and diamonds and a single coil of serpent scales, until it reached a girl named Camilla Shand. The echo is almost too neat to be true. 2 women, a century apart, both the mistress of a Prince of Wales. Both for years the discreet companion the establishment wished would simply disappear. So here is the question this whole film has been circling. Why would a woman on her way to becoming queen choose to wear a mistress's rubies in the very palace where that mistress's story ended? She did not have to. She chose to. On the 21st of March, 2002, before she was a duchess, before she was a queen, Camilla attended a concert hosted by Elizabeth II at Buckingham Palace. And around her throat she wore a flexible ruby and diamond necklace with matching earrings. The Keppel suite, the very jewels traditionally tied to Edward VII and Alice. It is the one clearly documented occasion on which she has worn them in public. One night, in that palace. Her great-grandmother's rubies returned to the room where Alice's story ended. And there is a further story, the most romantic of all, that Charles himself hunted down Alice's jewels at auction so that Camilla could wear them. A king buying back a king's gift to a mistress for the woman he loved. It is told often and warmly. So here is what we can actually prove, that Camilla owns the suite and wore it that night. And here is the gap no one has ever closed. Not a single palace record, not one auction catalogue confirms the purchase, and the few accounts that try to pin it down contradict each other. We leave it exactly there, as the kind of thing this family has always done best, tacitly understood, never quite documented. What we do know is quieter and somehow better. Most people would bury an ancestor like Alice Keppel, a king's mistress, the family's open secret. Camilla did the opposite. She went looking for her. Camilla has spoken of visiting the Villa dell'Ombrellino as a child, Alice's own house above Florence, and of her regret that her mother had sold it. The great-granddaughter remembered the place where the mistress had grown old. The thread was never broken, it was only waiting, and then it resolved in a way Alice could not have arranged for herself, because Alice never got the title. She got the influence, the fortune, the jewels, the discretion, but never the place at the front of the room. Her great-granddaughter did. In 2022, Camilla became queen. The mistress's bloodline walked back into the palace, Not through a side door this time, but through the front. Alice Keppel left almost nothing of herself behind. No diaries to speak of, no confession, no scandal of her own making. She spent a lifetime arranging to be forgotten, and she very nearly succeeded. But the rubies are still here, on the throat of a queen who carries her blood, her face, and her old, unfinished story. The jewel kept the secret she spent her whole life keeping. That was always the bargain. The gift outlives the silence.